Hello and welcome, everybody. I am Debbie Peterson of Getting to Clarity, and I'm so glad that you can join me and my friend Mimi today as we talk about communicating through chaos. Welcome, Marissa. Mimi and I are both keynote speakers, conference speakers, and as you well know, there's not a whole lot of that going on anymore, or at least for hopefully a very short future. So we love what we do, and we thought, how can we take what we know and share it with the people that can benefit from it while we're kind of in this disruptive period? So Mimi graciously agreed to come on with me today, and she's going to be giving tips and strategies about communicating through chaos, how to hold it all together when everything is falling apart. So I know that you're going to get some wisdom out of this. So Mimi, a little bit about Mimi. Her real name is Amelia, but she is affectionately known as Mimi, and she works with individuals and organizations to amplify their communication, their connection, and their confidence so that they can make an influential impact on the world. So we all need that today. So she has over 10 years of corporate leadership training experience. She's got a real knack for making meaningful connections with audiences, and I can vouch for that. I have seen her speak. And she has an insatiable appetite for helping others maximize their potential. So Mimi knows how to rock a platform, connect with a crowd, and provide guidance so that others can effectively do the same. And that's what she's going to be doing for us today virtually. So Mimi, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today. And I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Debbie. So I have also been really fortunate to see Debbie speak, and she's a powerhouse on the platform. And now I guess, Debbie, I get to add something to that bio and say I can rock a platform and a screen. Because that's a different shift. Well, so welcome to Communicating Through Crisis. Here's the problem that we're facing. Whether or not we're in this space right now with COVID-19, where there's tons of uncertainty around. And what we find is, from a fundamental standpoint, our brains react differently in times of chaos. And so I think the step is to acknowledge that happens. And what the research actually says is when we are triggered in an emergent situation, and typically we can identify emergent situations as there's a fire alarm going off, there is a medical emergency, our heart rates can jump up to 175 beats per minute. And when that happens, it doesn't allow for us to think very clearly. And I think the same thing is happening in this space with COVID-19. And by the way, I've been telling people, I'm not as worried about COVID-19 as much as I'm worried about COVID-15. That's the 15 pounds I'm going to gain from being self-quarantined for the past couple of weeks. But I digress.
Well, the freshman 15 all over again, just in a different box. So yeah.
Right. And so when our heart rates go up, we can't think clearly, and we're not really able to process information the same. And we literally go into shutdown mode. And so I think it's this first step of recognizing that bad news affects different people in different ways. And how do we process that? How do we have that self-awareness? And so my first step for people as they're going through this process is to check in with yourself. And whether or not you're in a leadership role where you're leading people in an organization remotely, or you're just leading your family through this, I think the first step is having an awareness of how you feel in the moment and how you're processing your own thoughts, your own emotions, and your own feelings. Because sometimes I think we get numb to stuff, especially if we get over sensationalized news. And I'm going to talk about that a little later, turn the news off. But we get this sense of, you become desensitized over time because it's just constantly in your face. Every time you look through your Facebook feed or you turn on the news, it's COVID-19 and you just go, oh. So one of the best things that you can do in terms of checking in with yourself is to actually breathe. And I know that sounds really simple, but just because it's simple doesn't mean we always apply it. And so there's been support within the research around taking a deep breath. And I actually want you to practice it with me now. So take a deep breath in, hold it, let it out through your mouth. Take a deep breath in, hold it, and let it out through your mouth. You can even notice in that time that your shoulders might have dropped a bit, that your heart rate starts to lower. If you're in that upper echelon of that heart rate monitor, you can drop your heart rate by 20 or 30 beats per minute simply by remembering to breathe. And I think breathing is something that we can do throughout the day, just to kind of do a check-in with ourselves and kind of lower things,
And a nice deep breath too.
Yeah.
Into the diaphragm, filling the lungs after that. Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, I think because we need to actionate our brains, it really helps us get that clarity of mind, that clarity of thought. I love my Apple Watch for that reason, because I get the little alerts that says, try to breathe. And at first I used to ignore it.
Oh, good idea.
Oh, good. I got to remember to do that. But I actually take a moment and I'll go and just sit for a minute and breathe and help kind of work through that. The other issue that we're facing is when we're in that state of uncertainty and chaos, we have to also realize what our decision-making process may be. And there are actually 3 stages you can go through in a decision-making process to help you through uncertainty and crisis. And the first one is we actually go through what we consider denial, right? So we don't believe it's happening. We don't want to panic. We don't want to look silly. And I think of some folks, and Debbie, I know you're in Florida right now, and it was probably some of the people who were at the beach who were in denial that this is actually happening, right?
They were. And now they're getting tickets if they're on the beach.
Oh, so, yikes. Yeah, I heard like
closed.
Michigan just did the same thing. There's the shelter in act has been put in place, and you can get a misdemeanor if you're out and about and you don't really have a reason within that category to do that. The other part of denial is we also look at social proof. So if we look at other people and we see them on the beach, we're like, well, can't be that bad. If I see Debbie, not that I saw Debbie on the beach, but if I see someone else that
pool. But the pool is closed too, so.
Yeah, oh man. But yeah, so I look to other people as far as social proof to decide what my behavior should be in times of uncertainty. Then we go through deliberation, and that's when we think about what are our options, what can we do to help combat the situation. And this is where a little bit of imagination is helpful, because we can start to script, well, what potentially will be my next steps? And I'm going to go into this in a little bit more detail in the coming steps, but that deliberation process actually helps us calm down and think through, what will our possible steps be versus living in fear in that space. And then the last part is taking decisive action. So you've acknowledged the problem, you've considered all your options, and now what do I want to do next? What are those next steps that will kind of help me through making it through this situation? Now, Debbie, I know a lot of the folks that are in your audiences as well as mine they're going through, career transitions. They may be looking to step into leadership. They may be looking for the opportunity to show their leadership ability. And know that even in the space, if you don't have the title as leader, your ability in this moment can really shape your leadership experience and your leadership, the way you show up. I like to call it your swag, but your leadership, the way you show up with your leadership. And
I so agree with that, because regardless of, you have the title, you're working your way into the title, you're leading your own family, you're out being a leader in the community or politically. I mean, we show up as leaders in so many ways, shapes, and forms. So don't think to yourself, well, I'm not a leader. Because if you're looking to communicate with someone, you're here on this training to be able to communicate better than you are a leader, regardless of you having the title or not. So
absolutely.
Totally.
And I also like to think in that space of if you're leading others, that you're a reflection of your team, and you're also a reflection of your family. So, and even, you take it a step further, and we're leaders of our friends and our close folks that are in our circles. And so your emotions are contagious. If you're freaking out, if you're revving up, if you're snowballing, so will the other people around you. That's guaranteed to happen. So when you check in with yourself, it's very important that you bring to awareness of how you're coming across. And that actually takes us into step 2, which is keep tabs on your language. Watch the language that you're using. What are you saying about the future? Yeah, you should totally acknowledge that you have fear. You just don't want to feed it. And acknowledging the fear is okay, but you don't want to show that I'm not clueless or in denial. But part of your humanity as a leader is your ability to say, yeah, this is an issue, and here's what we're going to do to move forward. And so it's about, showing that positivity, not pessimism, or not even that Pollyanna perspective, right? Well, nothing is happening. No, it's really about releasing your worries in that space. But think about who you're sharing that with. If you are leading other people in a formal context, really think about how you're coming across, because when we're in times of stress and in times of uncertainty, we actually stop using positive or forward-thinking language, or even risky type of language, because we think, if I can't control this situation, this is what I can control. Think about all the toilet paper hoarding and the water hoarding that's happening right now. If you follow any of this from psychologists, they will tell you that's a form of me being able to keep control. I can't control what's happening in the world right now, but I can control my TP. And I got 60 rolls to demonstrate that.
So it's not sticking your head in the sand.
Nope.
It's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it.
Absolutely. And it's thinking about the context in which you're using, but more specifically, the words. So when we start to use more conservative and security and certainty focused language, it helps us feel like we can have that protection. So it's important that as a communicator, that you recognize, respect all of people's reactions to things as you go through, and what language are you using to help even provide empathy to them. Because I think that's really the next step, is as you're watching your language, be empathetic, because everyone's going to deal with things differently. And what I teach in a lot of my programs is this concept of feel, felt, found, right? So feel, felt, found is a little, I keep it in my back pocket as a way to illustrate empathy. And empathy doesn't mean that I agree with you. It doesn't mean that I disagree with you. It just means that I acknowledge that you're allowed to feel that way. And as a leader, it's really important when I check in with my own self about my own awareness, am I also doing that for the people that are around me? And so feel, felt, found sounds a little bit like this. Here, it sounds like you're upset, or I get a sense that this is really weighing on you, or I get I feel like you're struggling a bit, right? So that's the feel part. It's acknowledging the emotion. The next part is the felt. You know what? I'm feeling the same way. Or I was just talking to Beth, and she was having that same experience. And what happens with the feel and the felt part is I'm acknowledging the emotion behind it. Then I'm telling you, it's okay. Like, other people have felt the same way.
Yeah, or I felt this before.
Exactly. And so it helps kind of lessen what happens is we get emotionally hijacked in situations, and that helps bring us back down. It's really a protective mode that we put ourselves in, because our amygdala is the fight, flight, or freeze center of our brain. So when we get into those intense situations, then that's the way we protect ourselves. Well, continuing to provide empathy helps people bring that to our equilibrium. And then the last part is the found. And this is the part I always caution people with, is be careful with the found. You actually have to get permission to go into the found. And so the found is, here's what I found to be helpful. Here's something to think about. Here's a next step that you can take. The found only comes into place once you've gotten the permission to give it, meaning that I have acknowledged how you felt. I've actually listened to you and heard you, and acknowledged that I heard you, identified that, hey, it's okay for you to feel that way. And then I can go into the found. Because what often happens is I feel like people fall into two buckets. Either we're the people who try to fix everything. So we're like, we're going to fix it. I want to give you that solution. Or with a person like, I really just want to talk about it, and I want you to hear me, and I want you to hear me out. And a lot of times those are in conflict with each other. Because if you're a fixer, you're like, well, hey, we can get through this. We can fix it. We're done. And the feeler's like, look, dude.
I got the solution. Yeah.
Yeah.
And some people just want to be heard. Some people just want to be heard and validated. And so by going through the feel, felt, found, and then with permission to be able to, here's what I'm hearing, may I give you some feedback, or just some sort of phrase to, can I share with you that something might help?
Absolutely.
Getting that permission. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Debbie, I think it is just checking in with yourself. And it goes back to that first step is, where am I in the process? Have I acknowledged how I felt? Because that energy that you give off to other people can either energize them or be a little off-putting, or help to really exacerbate the issue, right? So you continue to add on to it. Step number 3 for me is really about doing what I call do the fears 2-step. And if you know anything about
2-step,
fear 2-step, meaning you got to dance with the fear a little bit, but don't let the fear stop progress. It's okay to acknowledge that this is scary, that this stings, that this sucks. I think if you try to bury it and you don't acknowledge that, it just comes and creeps back up later. But if you acknowledge, okay, I really don't like this, or this is really bothering me, or I'm uncertain about my job, I'm uncertain about even how this is going to affect the economy. I think it's putting all those fears out there, and then at the same time deciding how you're going to move forward. So,
and it's funny you say that. Just this morning, I went out, I took a walk. My friend called me while I was on a walk. And, she's got a little bit of fear around everything that's going on. And her husband keeps telling her, oh, just focus on the positive. And she says, I just needed to talk to someone who I could commiserate with, because she knew that she needed to experience that and just kind of have someone listen to her. So it even ties into the steps that you gave before, that, the feel, felt, found. So, yeah, no, that's terrific.
Well, yeah, and you can't have the rosy colored glasses on it. Oh, it's going to be okay. Yeah, that positivity is helpful, but that can also be damaging because you're not realistic. And if you acknowledge the fear, you acknowledge what's bothering you, you acknowledge the uncertainty, I think it's putting out there, you get it off your chest, then you can move forward with the progress. You can't be proactive and say, yes, this is not bothering me, and then it creeps back up a little bit later, and before you know it, you're depressed and you don't know why. And that's because you haven't given your space to actually deal with it. If we shift this to a work example and you're leading a team, have them acknowledge their fear. Have them talk through what's bothering them. The key is let them get it out, and you give them that moment or space to do that. And then you pivot with how we're going to move forward, how we're going to progress. And so, if you're working virtually, there's still work to be done. But I think you give people the space, and that's part of that confidence is, hey, I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm fearful too, but here's what we're doing to move forward. And as a leader, people are looking for that decisiveness. They're looking for you to be that example. They're looking for you to show that, yeah, this is scary, but you have a plan for how we're going to do this. And even if the plan changes, and it may, and we can see this literally day by day with the different updates you're receiving from the federal government or even your state government, we're still going to progress and move things forward.
And being as transparent as you can with, speaking to your employees. I remember back in my corporate days, a publicly traded company that I worked for kind of overstated earnings a bit. And, everything came down. And one of the things that they said is that, when we talked about crisis communication, tell it all, tell it now. So being transparent and being there for the people that you lead, having a plan, even if the plan changes, that's just terrific.
Well, yeah. And I would take it even a step further and say, and I've been following like some crisis communication folks, and that transparency is important. Tell them what you can tell them and tell them that it may change, but also put a central communication source together. So where can I go to get the updated information? So is it a website? Will I communicate through email? Can you expect an update around the same time every day? For those of you who are leading folks virtually, and I'll give a couple more tips a little bit later, but It's important. Have what I call a virtual stand-up meeting every morning to check in with people. Even if it's 10, 15 minutes, I like to call them virtual lattes, right? So you bring your coffee or your caffeinated beverage with you, and you just do a quick check-in. And
right, it's helping to manage their expectations. They need this.
Exactly. And that structure is so vital because that gives them something to hold on to. So I can expect every morning at 9 a.m., Debbie's going to get on Zoom, go to webinar, Microsoft Teams, and she's going to walk us through what we can expect for the day. And even
here's what we know right now.
Here's what we know. And even if it hasn't changed, even if it was the same thing yesterday, that consistency is what people appreciate. And that structure gives them something to hold on to.
Very important. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the next step with this, when it comes to, dancing, doing the fear two-step, is focusing on what's known. So what's known? We know the present. We know we're all in this together, that there's still work to do, that we're resilient, that we're resourceful, that we'll figure it out as time goes on, and our commitment and our convictions. Those are the known items. And I think you reinforce that with the team. What's unknown, we don't know the future. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know the weather 2 weeks from now, but I can tell you what is known, and here's what we're going to do in that moment. So I think it's really defining that for your team, it's defining that for your family, it's defining that for your friends. Hey, here's what we know. Here's what's the unknown. Here's how we're going to move forward. So the next step is really focusing on what you can control. And I think we overlook this in the times of uncertainty because there's so many unknowns that we go there automatically because it's changing our status quo literally by the moment. But I like to remind people that you can always control your response. You can control your attitude. You can control your behaviors, your words, and your actions. And you can always choose to be proactive rather than be paralyzed. And so it's really taking ownership of your authority and what you have control over. You can also control turning off the news. I am a big proponent for shut off the news, stay off social media, choose to pay attention to the positive posts that are out there, and also be the one that's putting those things out there. My newsletter is getting ready to go out tomorrow, and I actually created a new section called Tell Me Something Good. Tell me the good that is happening in the world, because it's there, but I really believe what we focus on expands. So if I'm focusing on this negativity, it's literally going to weight me down. But if I choose to focus on the positive, guess what? I'm going to see more positive. I'm going to see more things that make me excited and hopeful and give me a sense that we can make it through this.
Yes, yes. And I know that even before all of this happened, I don't watch the news. And now I limit it to just just a little bit of time during the day so I can get updates. I have trusted sources that I go to get information that I need. But otherwise, I mean, it's just you get sucked into the fear and the panic and the spin, and it's just not helpful.
It's not. And that actually transitions to the last one, which is laugh first and hardest, right? So actually there's research indicates that laughter reduces the amount of stress hormones in your body and increases the levels of endorphins. So that those chemicals that make you feel good. And according to Stress Management with Intelligence magazine, the effects of laughter are more than chemical. Laughter actually connects people and offers social support as a good sign of stress relief. And so I've had actually friends where we have intentionally sent bad jokes to each other. And what joke can you tell that's going to make that person groan the most? I have a background as a DJ, so I've been exchanging with my fellow DJs playlists around the COVID-19. So we had our one playlist was social distancing playlist, and we had You Can't Touch This by by MC Hammer, or I Get So Lonely by Janet Jackson, right? So we just had fun with it. You try to find the laughter, the levity in the moment, and it helps ease some of the tension and some of the uncertainty.
I mean, anything that, you enjoy, and you need that now more than ever. What is it that makes you feel lighter? What is it that brings you joy? It might be FaceTiming with your grandkids or your children, or There was this thing, I got to see if I can find it on the internet, called Laughing Kitty. I mean, it was out like decades ago, and it was this little kitty that would laugh, and at the end it would snort because it was laughing so hard. And it was like every time I watched it, I couldn't help but laugh, you know? So finding things like that you enjoy. What are the things that you enjoy doing? I know music is something that can really shift a mood for people. You know, the other night I just put on my list, and I had it up so loud. My husband was out on the patio. He came in. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm cooking." So I'm cooking dinner and I'm dancing, and you know. As a matter of fact, I had completed my exercise. My Apple Watch thought that I started a new exercise session. So.
Oh, I love that.
What are the things that you enjoy? And you need those now more than ever. So I think that's critically important.
You do. And Debbie and I are friends actually through Apple Watch. And when I see her out there, I'm like, man, I got to get out there, because Debbie has encouraged. So now I know your secret. Just put out some music while I'm cooking, and that's.
I know. It counts. It counts.
Absolutely. And just give yourself permission to laugh. Give yourself permission to be in that moment. I think it makes all the difference in the world. And that's contagious, because when people see you in a good space, that allows them to be in a good space. One of my favorite tell me something good, feel good stories is DJ D Nice, who's a celebrity DJ. And as you can know with DJs, that social interaction is their job. Like, that is the basis of what they do. So the fact that we can't be out with folks is it could be detrimental. He actually hosted a Instagram Live where he DJ'd a 6-hour set. Over 100,000 people showed up. All these social outlets and media outlets like the New York Times and Vibe Magazine, Forbes featured him, and it was a feel-good moment. He over 3,000 subscribers just in that time, because
Wow.
he used the skill set that he had to make people feel good. And music does that. So I think that's such a good example, Debbie.
So let me see if let's do a quick overview. What I heard you say, step one is check in with yourself. So kind of, where are you at? Denial, deliberation, right? Are two of the steps within that. Making sure that you're not in denial, sticking your head in the sand, and deliberating your next move. Step number 2, keeping tabs on your own language. And language is huge. I had a coaching client yesterday, and as we were chatting, I was listening to her. She was using language like weighing me down and anvil and just things that were really heavy. And I pointed that out to her, and she had no idea. But it comes out in the language. So really paying attention, because the language is the window to what's going on in your mind. So if you're in control of your language, then you're in control of what's going on in your head, which is key. So 2 is keeping tabs on your language. 3 is doing the fierce 2-step with fear. Just dance with it, experience it, but don't get weighed down by it. So that's where we get into feel, felt, found, connecting with what other people are feeling. And also explaining other people who may have felt that way, if you have felt that way, and then found with permission, giving them some feedback or a way forward or some strategies that can help them, but only with permission. 4 is focus on what you can control. And 5 is laughter and just those things that you can do to elevate your mood. So, I mean, that's just amazing. Talk about putting people's mindset in the right place to be able to communicate through this, chaos in their business environments, in their home environments, in their communities, and really showing up in a way that truly is of service, because that's so important these days. So what other tips do you have, or how do you want to wrap it up or finish this for our guests that are on the...
I just want to
go to Q&A.
Oh, awesome. So I just want to say to folks that be kind to yourself. I think we beat up on ourselves a lot. I know I do, because I'm all about production. I should be getting things done. And I was catatonic for a little bit. I was on my couch for 2 days, just not allowing myself to deal with this. And when I realized it and I was kind of beating myself up, I go, it's okay. this is a major issue. And I think it's just acknowledging and giving yourself grace through that. So check in with yourself, give yourself grace, love on yourself. And then that will, in my opinion, other people will see that and you give them permission to do the same thing.
Very nice. Very nice. So I want to thank you for being with us today. In a moment, we're going to go to Q&A. But for those who may be watching this virtually, I'm going to end the recording now. So I am Debbie Peterson of Getting to Clarity, and I work to advance women and emerging leaders in their careers, helping them to find the next level or the next chapter by creating a roadmap and giving them the tools to achieve it. As Mimi is as well, I'm a business keynote speaker and career growth strategist, as well as a mentor and an author. And I can't thank Mimi enough for being here today. So again, Mimi is a conference speaker. She's a keynote speaker and lots of leadership training experience. She's not on stages now. We're both hoping to get back on the stages soon, but she's graciously sharing just her amazing knowledge and gifts with the world. So, and this is just one place. So you can find her where, Mimi? Where can people find her?
AmpUpSuccess.com. So AMPUP success.com, and on all social media channels. So Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Hey Mimi Brown.
Love it. Love it.